So I'm here with Ryan Holota from the Science Centre. He is the Vice President of Operations over there, as well as one of our local representatives in the running, walking community, as well as an obstacle racer. So welcome, Ryan. Thanks for your time today.
Yeah, thanks so much for talking to me about this today.
So let's start with, tell us a little bit about yourself and your relationship with running, maybe how you got started and where you kind of went from there.
So I have tried to be a runner for a very long time. I went through a lot of years where I would sort of start like a coach to 5K in May, and I would get 3 to 4 weeks into it, and then I would quit and not run for the rest of the year. And I really did repeat that sort of over and over again. I always thought that it was something that I should be doing, just to be active and be healthy. I spend a lot of time sitting at a desk, and I could just never really put it together just with everything going on. And then a number of years ago, I had heard about these obstacle course races, and I thought they sounded like a lot of fun. And eventually, I ended up signing up with a trainer to sort of help me through those obstacle course races. And running is a huge part of those. The distances of the races that I run are up to sort of a half marathon in length. And the best thing I got from my coach was sort of structured training on that. So I would start with like a coach to 5K, and I would just basically run as hard as I could. So it would say like, run 1 minute, walk 1 minute, and I would just run as fast as I could for a minute. And it was just like soul crushing. I always felt beat. I was always tired, and I never wanted to go through. And then working with this coach, he was like, no, just, you don't need to go that fast. Like, slow down, build up that base over time. And eventually it got to the point where it's actually something I really enjoy to do now, is just, going out for a run on a Saturday morning or whatever. And it's become not just training, but it's like something that I really look forward to doing, like for me or with my wife. So
Was there anything in that training that you would say got you from that transition from it kind of being almost a job or a task that you felt you had to do to now where you want to do? Is there something you can think that might have been kind of a key in that initial training that moved you to that phase where it became a fun thing, or where you are, like you're saying, you want to go out and do it now?
yeah, well, I think the biggest one was just that because I didn't have that base at all, like I would go from being very, very sedentary to all of a sudden just, trying to go as hard as I could. And I would get so tired, and I would be so out of breath doing it on my own, just sort of running and following those programs, that it really just took all the enjoyment out of it. And then working with a coach, one of the things that we do a lot of is like heart rate training, right? So go out and run it like, in zone 3 or something like that, right? Well, it doesn't feel like you're running very hard often when you do that. But if you stick with that for a little while, then all of a sudden you find actually that you're not just sort of barely running anymore. Eventually you do build up so that, oh, you're actually out for a jog at that point, right? And then once you start to get some of those wins, and they start to stack up, and you start to see some of those improvements, then I mean that changes the whole game, right?
Yeah, I think from that, one of the things I would take is the goal setting, and setting those kind of reasonable goals, and not going from A to Z immediately, but finding all those steps, A, B, C, D, all the way through each of those pieces, I think is something that would be very important for people to think about and to understand. I think that's what I hear a lot. Initially, you might have had that idea of, I'm just going to go out there and go super fast, but it's something that's more of a slow build. Was there a mental process to that as well? I mean, these are all very physical aspects of getting tired and going out. What mentally changed to encourage you to continue to go on?
Well, I think when I started doing the obstacle course racing stuff, I think that was probably it, because I really enjoyed the obstacle part of it, and just sort of the idea of like, crawling under barbed wire, or like carrying a brick or like a big log or something like that. So I just thought that was really interesting. But there's so much focus on that. I think when you look at those types of races, you look at those things because that's where they take your picture, and those are the pictures that you share on social media. But you forget sort of that sometimes on like a beast, which is the 21K race, sometimes there's 2 kilometers between obstacles, and you're running between those, right? And so I guess at first maybe it felt like a little bit of a chore, like something that I had to do, but then I think as you get better at it, it just becomes something that you really do enjoy. And running, I think, is very meditative as well. Once you find a pace that you're comfortable at, and then you're just alone, either with your thoughts or with music that you're listening to, or your podcast or whatever. And I think there's something about that too, where we live such busy lives, and we're sort of like bombarded with information that we don't necessarily control, that having that time that's focused, and you're running, but you're also kind of focusing on just whatever you want, whether it's your podcast or silence or your pace or your footsteps or whatever. I think there's a lot of value in that, and that's certainly one of the things that I enjoy most about running.
With that, are you more of an individual runner, or are you more of a group runner? And tell us about your running community that you've developed within the city here?
Yeah, so the group that I train with is called Conviction Fitness, and so pre-COVID, we all trained together quite often. So we'd go out and we'd run laps around Mount Pleasant as a warm-up, and you'd talk to all those people, and you'd find out what was happening with them during the week, and what adventures they were planning, and what their race plans were for the year. And so you get quite close to those people, and then as well, you go to the race with them, and you see them, and you know their faces, and then you meet new people. And so I think, running definitely has a huge community, and you really do build, maybe it's sort of, you build a relationship, not just on it's more than just having something in common. It's like the trial of running in a race, and any race, whether it's a 5K or a full marathon, it's a common experience, right? And so you really do build, there's like a camaraderie there. And a lot of times I think those friendships go just beyond sort of, liking the same movies or whatever. It goes to that, a more core sort of thing.
It's a deep connection.
Yeah.
You've kind of all experienced, like you've kind of said earlier, that soul crushing moments, but at the end, the massive elation of completing and achieving the goals that you've set out. So not someone who maybe hasn't gone out and run doesn't see those elements. It's easy to see the soul crushing part because we've all kind of started there. Once we kind of go on, and I think that what you're saying with that community that you've become part of is you've all been able to celebrate and to be able to share those common experiences is really exciting.
You also get to see them progress and get better. And this is definitely something that I always struggle with, is that I don't notice when I get better at something often, because it happens slowly over time. You'll run a 8-minute kilometer, and your time will go down to 7-minute kilometer, but your heart, it feels the same to you because it took you 3 or 4 months or whatever. But the people that you're running with will be like, wow, you're doing great. You're barely puffing it during the warm-up run or whatever, right? And so they notice that about you, and you get to notice that about them. And so it really is a journey when you have a group like that. It's nice.
I had an experience like that this summer. I've really picked up my running during COVID here. I've had a lot more time on my hands, so I did that. And I was out running. My kids were playing at the playground, and I ran past, and I finished. My wife said, "Wow, you actually look like you're moving fast this year." And I was like, "Yeah, I am actually moving much faster than I was." So to have her be able to see that and just from a distance recognize it was really quite cool. And that kind of gave me that motivation to go to that next level.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
In terms of what you've accomplished so far, any moments that you're super proud of?
Yeah, I think, so I've accomplished some of the sort of the race goals that I set out for, certainly. So, in the obstacle racing world, the Spartan races, they have what's called a trifecta. You run a race that's called a sprint, and a race that's a super, and then a race that's a beast. And it's like a sort of like a 5K, 12K half marathon. And, in 2018, completed my first trifecta. I actually flew to Florida and ran my half marathon distance there. And so that was really great. But also, my wife and I run together quite often now. I run with my kids sometimes. So I have two kids. The three of us together did the Night Owl 5K last year, for example, and just doing that as like a family. That's been in a lot of ways, more rewarding. But some of those goals are really nice too, where you have a big event and you sort of put that flag in the ground that you're going to do that, and accomplishing those goals is also great. So.
What's next for Ryan with his running?
Yeah, well, this year has been a lot of virtual races. So I don't have anything like huge that is on my radar. I was supposed to be traveling to Greece this year to run a race, but I'm not doing that anymore. So, but one of the things that I have been really good at this year is being a lot more consistent. A lot of times my running would be, even now, maybe I'm supposed to run like 3 times a week and I might hit like 2 times a week, and most of the time. But this year I've been really solid. Like we typically will have like some kind of a high intensity day, and then sort of a medium length slow run, and then a longer slow run. And I've been really consistent with those. And so I've noticed, not just in terms of like my pace, but in how comfortable I feel when I'm running, and how tired I am sort of when I'm done those things. So, yeah.
If you could give some advice to runners getting started, or even those that have been out there doing it for years, what's the best advice that you would share with runners in our community?
I think the biggest shift probably for me was maybe to not care so much about my time at the start. I think it's really easy to sort of look at those leaderboards, and you can watch people run a 5K, and I don't know what the world record is now, but like certainly under 17 minutes or something like that, right? Or under 20 minutes for sure. And if I think that at like 44 years old that I'm gonna be doing that, sort of with my training history and my life history of athletics, that's probably not going to happen. But you can still get to a point where you're very comfortable and you're still fast for your age group, or fast for your level, and just realize that you're like really getting a lot out of it, aside from just a time at the end or whatever. There's a lot of the most important part of that journey, or the most important part of any race or any goal, is the journey. Actually, it's not necessarily that destination. So so think about where you want to go for sure, but really enjoy that ride, and don't be so focused on going fast right off the start. Realize that there's a base that you need to build up. If you have a longer race coming up, get miles on your feet, whether they're fast miles or slow miles, but start to put that time in on your feet, and sort of get used to going that distance. So if you've got a half marathon coming up, and I know that not every training program does this, but some of the advice that I got was, before I went and did my first 21K race, was to make sure that I've actually been 21K on my feet. Not necessarily running, but just to make sure that I've gone that far at one time. And that was really helpful to me, because I didn't end up at a wall where sort of like, I had if the longest that I'd run was an 18K, and then I got to that point during a race, and then I was like, okay, uncharted territory. I could actually go back and say, I've done this, like I know that I've done this. I've gone this far before, and I know that I can make it. There wasn't that question in my head. So.
No, I think that's great advice. Great advice. Something that people can really take and use when they're out there, whether they're training for a 5K, whether they're training for a marathon, or whether they're just going out to do it recreationally, and challenge themselves. I mean, I think we all set those goals and figure out what's the next thing for us. So I say thank you very much for your time today. Some great advice, some great stories. I wish you all the best in your training, and hopefully in the next couple of years here, things get to the point where you're able to get back to Sparta to complete that obstacle course race with racers from around the world in a very, very unique environment, where some of that obstacle racing concept kind of, I think, began and started. And then at least I even know where the marathon for sure started in Greece. So the kind of the home place of a lot of the longer distance running. So again, thank you very much, Ryan, for your time today. And we'll talk to you later.
Yeah, thank you so much. Have a great day.